Hey guys, so this is web series video number 2. We're going to be piecing it together. I've got a new GoPro. I got Brandon here. This is his harness. We're going to go ahead and start stripping it down. We're going to walk through the process. So essentially we have the power distribution block system here, which is mostly what guys like to run. Some guys are trying to use the Relay 109, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, because if you search Relay 109, there are millions upon millions of threads of people like, oh, my thing's not working. So yeah, don't use Relay 109. Run your own power system. It's so easy. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and start stripping this down. What you want to do is when you get the power distribution side, which is mostly and entirely all in the engine bay, find this plug. It's a T14. There's 14 connections in there. This is the main power system for sensors and everything. So we're going to just go ahead and take a video break here, and we'll be back. But we're going to backtrack all these wires to their location, and we'll be back. Okay, we're back. I forgot to mention that out of the two styles of doing a standalone harness, this is the one where we hack it up, meaning we cut the harness up. The other one that I pulled out, the one that I showed the demonstration on in the first video, that is a full uncut harness, except for in the locations that are for like the rear lights and the rear doors and everything. So Brandon's here. We knew we were gonna do a bunch of cutting and everything to get his stripped down, so we decided to just go ahead and chop and go. So we have now narrowed down the power system wires from what it was. So we took out all this junk, the automatic transmission stuff that was attached to it, yada yada yada. I mean, we just got a mess of stuff that has been taken off just because it's intertwined with the power system. So the important plug for us is this right here. Again, that's the T14 plug. We don't need that over there right now. So this is the main power system right here. So this is what drives the harness. We'll get the female side to that and run the standalone system. I can tell you right off the bat, without even looking at the book or anything, right here, this is the main constant for the engine. So that gets a 10 amp fuse. I'm sorry, not a 10 amp, a 30 amp fuse directly to the battery. So that's the constant. And then most of these are going to be your switched on, which is this yellow, this blue here. This is actually the power wire that goes to the fuel pedal. I can tell you that off the top of my head too, because I've done this enough times already. So anyway, we're going to keep doing the strip down here. Basically all we did was found what we needed the most, which is what connects the two sides of the engine harness together, which is this plug right here, this T14. Coming out of it is a bunch of different colored wires. Greens, yellows, purples, and a brown. Brown, solid brown on this harness, the ALH TDI harness, is always going to be a ground. Always, no question about it. The yellow and black is a power force sensor wire. That is what it is. It's common. Black and purple is another power for a different subsystem. And then red and violet is power as well. So these will all get their own switched power. So when you turn your key on, these all get powered up. And that's pretty much it for the power system. I'm not even kidding. There's a couple more on the other side, but there's 7 wires total that require power, and you're good to go. It's just stripping it down to getting to that point. You can see our garbage bale here. Those are all of our excess from our cuts that we're getting rid of. And that's the basic wire on that side. So we will keep at it here, and we'll get the other side of this, and we'll go through with you guys again here soon. Okay guys, we're back. We had gotten to the point of stripping down the ECU side of the harness, getting the loom off and everything. Yeah, we still got one more to go to bring it down to bare minimum. This one pretty much is untouched. The only thing that we're going to do is when we de-loom it is reroute things. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and go on. The reason I like to keep these Technicolor plugs is for ease of use. I know right off the top of my head, this blue one right here, it's going to connect together. That's our fuel pedal. The fuel pedal system here is real simple. Oh my gosh, we got to clean up our mess. I got tape sticking to me everywhere. So there it is. All right, so the fuel pedal is this bladed plug right here. Goes into the system. Basically everything on this except for this one wire, which we clipped. This will be a blue and yellow focus, kind of a light blue yellow color. That's just the power. Everything else is all relayed to signal. So if you had stripped it down and needed just the power to run, then that was it. That's all you gotta do. You hook power to this. This is one of the 7 wires that gets a power on my system, and it just literally powers this unit, and this responds and tells the computer what to do through the rest of the wires. Now, if this length of wire is too short for you, for your application, the easiest thing that you can do is just cut it. Cut it in the center between the plug and the other plug, and add any length of wire that you need to, and just do a color coordinated match. So, say we needed to lengthen it 3 feet, we'd go up and find one of the wires. So this is a yellow and green wire. After we've snipped all of them at the exact same spot, we solder in a 3-foot length from green yellow to green yellow, and the color of the wire in between doesn't matter. I mean, if you're this far into electrical, you should know that it really doesn't matter what color it is. It just needs to go specifically soldered in between. So you're just lengthening these wires. You're taking them, run them wherever you got to go from your fuel pedal location to wherever your ECU is. That's it. Now these harnesses are pretty short because they're supposed to be right in the rain gutter system of the Volkswagen car. So it is recommended that you take them apart, and when you get it all set up to where you're going to start taping and lengthening wires and stuff, have your ECU in the location that you want it to be. Ooh, my camera's all screwy sideways. I've got a camera mount, I'm not even using it. What an idiot. So anyway guys, have that set up in the same location. Have your ECU where you want it, and then run your wires accordingly as far as length. Everything can be extended as long as you solder them together. So we're gonna go ahead and start taking off the automatic transmission computer assembly. Our car was an automatic, the donor car, so we've got this giant harness here. This is all garbage, all of it. So look at how much of the harness is gonna be reduced just by getting rid of this. Isn't that crazy? So we're gonna go ahead and strip this down. We're gonna go ahead and get this prepped and ready for showing you guys what to delete, what to not to delete, how to read the schematic, and how to correspond it to this. But this is the strip down. So we'll talk to you shortly, guys. Okay, guys, little update here. Brandon's working on tearing down the fuel supply engine side with the glow plugs and all the injector stuff. I went ahead and pulled off the transmission computer. With the automatic transmission, the harness is pretty doubting. All this stuff here is now completely gone. So basically all you do, and I will try and set this back up a second here how I had it. Come on. Okay, so these were directly in line with this plug here. You can see the wires are right here for them. A couple of them. My fingers aren't working because they're covered in stickiness from this harness, so wear gloves. So there's the computer for the automatic transmission, and then it connected into the harness here. Go ahead and take this by the hand and trace it back, clip it, pull it out of there. So you got this whole harness right here. Junk. Automatic transmission has nothing to do with what you need for running standalone. I don't know if that's the same if you're going to do an automatic transmission. Remember, this is for an ALH up to a manual. This is a standalone system. So if you're not controlling the Volkswagen transmission, I'm pretty sure you don't need that either, but you will probably need some of these signal inputs. So it's a good idea to get about 6 inches away from the ECU plug. Where's this stuff coming from?
Not bad.
Get about 6 inches away and clip it, okay? And there were 2 wires that went down to the harness here. On the power distribution block, which is this brown, has the main engine ECU constant power. It has the wake up signal switch and also the sensor constant power for the ECU. There's this one red wire here. It is in the brown plug. They're all labeled. Let's see if we can get this thing to focus. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see that. It might be too close. Yeah, I can't tell. They're all labeled. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So the plug looks like this. The constant is the bottom left, which is in number 4 position. Number 3 position is the automatic transmission computer power. It is a red solid wire, but it's wrapped with a black plastic. You can see it, I think you can see it in there. You can see the casing is wrapped in black. Go ahead and clip that, that's not needed. And then on your white connector, again, remember, grab this by your hand and haul it over there. This is the twisted orange and black wires. That's a signal wire for the automatic transmission, but there's also another one in this harness that is for the high and low bus of the, I believe the high and low bus. I'm going off of memory right now. We'll find out later when I dig through the book, but I believe that's for the OBD. Follow the one that's attached to the transmission computer plug. Goes down to this white wire here. You just clip it 3 or 4 inches back. You can always just loom it. It's always safe to just go farther away from the plug. Don't cut it at the plug unless you're 100% sure, because you may need it later on, or you might want to modify it. And then this gray plug out of the plug system that you pulled out from the harness, yeah, it's in the trash by now, but this gray plug that's attached to the other side of the power assembly, we're going to end up stripping it down and we'll see what we need and don't need. But it's actually good to clip this back and use it if you need it for power distribution for accessories and stuff as well, because you can pull the power from the system that way. So this is essentially, remove the plugs here, what you need. These 2 pieces right here that we're working on are at most, or well, I should say at minimum, what you need to run. So yeah, you're looking at it. That's about it. There are a couple of pigtails out of this mess that we're going to end up using. We're keeping the large gauge stuff because we're going to set up him to, you know, basically just plug it onto a battery and go. But this is it. So from all that big mess, everything that we got, that's it. You're going to end up automatic transmission side and ground plugs, and that's pretty much it. So anyway, guys, next step for us is to get this all disassembled and then start deleting out the minor stuff that we don't need. This is the setup we're going to run with. Ooh, that's a glary. So it's an ECU for an ALH. We're going to run EGR delete, so we'll delete that out of the system. ASV delete, we're still debating. We're going to say delete it, but we're still debating just because diesel runoff scares us. Got to run the N75. And then for his standalone system, he'd like the option for cruise. We want the AC option. So in order to have the cruise, we have to have the clutch switch and the brake switch in the system as well. So we'll have to trace those out, make sure we have those wires available, and keep those in the system. So next part of the video we're going to section out is going to be determining what ECU wires run out of the system. Again, we are just using the Haynes manual. This is what I did with my first TDI run, and I have been happy with my standalone system. I've never had an electrical issue yet that wasn't my own stupidity, which is blowing a fuse because I put too many power things on one thing. So anyway, there you go, guys. We'll be back in a few. Okay, guys, we're back. We have stripped down the main ECU harness. We've pulled out a few things from this system. So these are all the dead end wires that are not used or technically deleted. ASV, which is the butterfly valve on the intake manifold, stops the overrun. A lot of people delete it automatically. Some people keep it. Malone recommends keeping it, but for the purpose of the build that we're doing with this harness, I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. We also deleted the EGR, and those plugs are off, so the only thing left of these 2 is the N75 and then the charge sensor. So that's basically all we're going to delete off of the harness sensor wise. Everything else is going to stay intact because everything else is going to be needed. We did not go through and strip down any of the AC stuff because he wants that as an option. Brake switches and everything like that are there. So our next task here is running down the power system. So this is how the harness sits. So this is the power plug. Again, constant from the battery is the big one. It loops in and it feeds what I like to call the sensor side of the ECU, which is all on this big plug. Has the MAF, the N75, the charge, also the the fuel pedal assembly is on that, and then the OBD, you know, basically the standard sensors. This black one has to do with just the auto transmission, but we also found a wire on there that goes for his cruise control. So we're going to leave this plug in play. None of these wires are going to be active until he figures out the cruise control system, which will be decided with the tune as well. Basically, it's just a signal sensor for the brake pedal switch, which, you know, hit the brake or the clutch and it shuts down the cruise control system. So we're not going to tackle that today. That'll be later. So with that done, we are left with the gray plug, which is strictly all auto transmission on there. And that's what we're going to get rid of next. So that is the, like I said, I call it sensor side. I'm sure there's plenty of names out there, but I call it. Then we go over to the other side of the ECU plug, which entirely deals with the fuel injection pump. So you got the main plug for the fuel injection, secondary plug, third plug, and then the, I believe the oil pressure signal sensors on there as well. Here's the glow plug system. One of my earlier videos discussed how to make that a standalone. I can tell you right now how easy it is to do it. So that is on the engine, and these are just strictly power wires because the ground is completed through the circuit on the chassis and to the engine. So as long as your engine has a good solid ground to the chassis and to the battery, that is all you need. Then these two big gauge wires, plug them together, put it on a relay that is switched. So when you push the switch, it signals the relay to send full power to these. These get full 12 volt, and it goes to the glow plug and warms them up. Depending on how long you want it is how long you hold the switch. 5 seconds holding the switch, glow plugs run for 5 seconds to heat up, do what they need to do. That's it. That is a very simple system. Look at my earlier videos if you want the actual walkthrough on how the relays run. Otherwise, we're just going to go ahead and forget that now because it's just in our way. So we also have on the injection side of the harness the boost control. I'm sorry, not the boost control, the map. There we go, got it. So 3 bar, 2 bar, whatever you're going to run, that's on that system. And then these two connect together. Oop, there it is. That's the check engine light for the oil. So one single plug. So that goes onto the oil cooler area there. So they are separated. Then this big T14 plug right here connects those two in a loop. And again, this is all power system side. So most of these, once we get through deleting it down, are just going to be power wires. So we got a big ground here. We're going to run the black and violet. That's a power signal. The green, the yellow is the main sensor power. So we're going to go ahead and go through this and get rid of this rat's nest, and then we'll be done with the standalone system, and I'll explain exactly how you connect this end of this plug and this end of this plug to be an actual standalone system. But as far as the sensors and everything else, nothing is touched now. The deleted down system, this big chunk of wires, remember the majority of this is all automatic transmission. There's probably 4 that we deleted. You think so? 4?
I think it's 4.
3 or 4 that were ASV, just the sensors that we deleted that we didn't need. So the ASV, the EGR, things of that nature. So we'll be back shortly and we will show you exactly what needs to be done with the power side. Okay guys, we're back. We're gonna run a test assembly here. We got an OBD2 wireless system. We're gonna go ahead and go for it. So we got rid of the rat's nest. I know it doesn't look like it because we got everything all kind of tangled. Nothing's changed in the main ECU harness. The only thing we've done is now tangle up for some power. So out of your brown plug here is the main power assembly. Again, big wire is constant. We got signal to switch on. We're gonna tether these together with the sensor wire. So out of this brown plug here, there's a yellow wire and a black and violet wire. Those both are continuous, and I recommend not cutting them because they go, I'm falling over. They go to a 3-way system in the harness that we deleted out. So the one that's continuous that goes across to keep, and then we have the ones that we have tethered into our power here. So basically it's a line that goes from this plug to this plug, which is the other side of our big harness cable here. That creates the big loop that we were talking about, how they go through to each other. Keep those continuous because they are three-way and you can tie them into a power source. So this gets to your switched power at that point. And we are about to delete down the T14 cable. So I just wanted to give you guys an update on that before we go ahead and strip it. And we're going to test it and get it functional. So the ECU is reading. Obviously, we're not going to start a motor because we don't have one sitting here. So anyway, guys, we'll be back shortly. All right, guys, we're back. So we have the ECU connected and operational. So we went ahead and filtered down this big T connection here. We ran into 4 wires here. I'm sorry, 3 wires on the T14 connector. We were very confused trying to figure out where they came from. They're labeled 11, 13, 12, and 14. And then we got smart and yeah, turned it over. There's nothing on the other side. So you run into that on a couple of these connectors, and I'll show you which ones they are. But these are totally useless because there's nothing communicating with the ECU. It's probably some option from another different model or different country of origin. On the American ALH, nothing. So we're going to go over to the other one that we know that there's nothing connected to. We have the orange connector here, which has the K line coming out, which is the one that we do have connected. The other is all AC related. This big bundle here is all air conditioning related. And then this one was the speed sensor for the cluster. So if you have an electronic gauge cluster, that would be the one coming from there. So on my personal setup, the only thing I have coming out of this orange plug is that gray and white K-line number. The rest of them are totally useless. So you could delete the other side of this if you wanted to and just have that one wire and just get rid of this plug because that's the K-line that goes to the ECU. So like I said, these plugs are kind of nice to have because if you ever do want to change, you can go to the junkyard and grab that plug and then have it. So that's why we usually don't delete off the other side. And then we did a little more chopping down on the power block, excuse me, to get that stuff running. We have this black T connector. This is left over. We have determined that this controls, is with the auto trans system and it controls cruise control and things of that nature. So this being complete all cruise control, I deleted this completely out of my system. And unfortunately, we thought the same thing on his setup, so we didn't collect this other end of this plug out of the car. We'll have to rectify that for him later when he gets his cruise control set up. But we are fully connected, powered up, everything's running. We're going to show you his program here. I use Torque Pro, he used something else. Go ahead and over there. So he's going to be working that, and we're going to see the throttle response come in. His program is a little slow in my opinion. My Torque Pro is a little faster, but we are reading an accelerator pedal for the absolute throttle position, which is showing exactly how much it's telling it to send to the fuel. So we got full response and he can bring it back up, off and on. So technically this is full standalone system now. So, and that's it. That's all it boils down to is this little bit that's left on the table. It looks like a mess, obviously, because we haven't loomed anything. We haven't run it or extended any wires to fit his application. As far as it goes, there's a ton of stuff on this that could be deleted down yet to make this even thinner. It's just not necessary for what he's going to be doing. It's all left to now putting it into the vehicle and getting things run from the ECU. I recommend starting at the ECU location and then working out from there and extending wires on that end of it, because again, everything is with these nice connectors. If you do screw something up, you can, and if you cut it on the opposite side of the connector, your main ECU harness is intact and these can always be soldered together and moved along. Same thing on the ECU side, but it's really nice to have an unmolested ECU on that point. So you don't have a bunch of soldered ends on wires like these if you choose later to use something. But most people are application driven. They know what they're going to do first, and I do recommend that. You're going to have a manual transmission with no AC, no cruise control, and things of that nature. This thing is tiny when you're done with it. A lot of this stuff gets cut out. So that's as simple as it is. There are 2 grounds. I always say there's 1 ground, but there are 2 locations because these actually tie into each other in this big loop system that we talked about. We have the main constant battery. And looks like my count was wrong. We got 3. Yeah, so 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, and it looks like 8 connections total for power. So 1, 2. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off and do a full count. And Brandon, you want to hold the wire here? We'll do a count so everybody can see. So we have coming off the blue connector, which is your throttle assembly. That is a powered wire, and that is one complete unit. You can have this under your dash. Once you have run your extensions, have this under your dash and literally just plug this into any kind of power source that you have under your dash. Lights, anything that's constant when the key is in the on position. So there's one. Now we have, back to the main power here, we have this yellow, which is a continuous, again, loops through the system. So we're gonna go 2. That's a continuous. Same thing with the purple, so that's 3. So we have 3 power wires connected. We have a main power bus system here that goes for the sensors, the downside sensor, which is kind of weird because this one only goes to this unit here. So I like to run this. I believe that's the intake air temperature is what that gets off of. So we have that. We have the OBD2 around 5. 6 is the other side of the power system. So in reality, it would be kind of more of a continuation of this loop. So this is just sensor side power. This is our homemade jig here, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And then 2 others. So we have 8 in total wires of power and 2 wires in ground. So take those from me. That's it. 8 power wires, 2 grounds, but technically it's 1 ground because you always ground once. So that's it. Brandon, you are all set for your standalone system. The only thing left to do is to delete his tune system to be what he wants, which I believe he's going to go a custom stage 5 tune from Malone, and get everything all set for how we wired it and finish wiring it up to his vehicle, and it's done. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. It was as in-depth as I think it needed to be. If you're still confused on things, you give me suggestions and I'll make a clarification for it. But it really is just that simple, just to start tearing things out. And especially if you have an automatic, a lot of that stuff is gone. And then a lot of it, again, doesn't need to be deleted unless you really want a thin wire setup. So that's it, guys. We'll see you soon. We'll be next video, we'll be actually installing it and getting it prepped into a system. So getting the ignition to wake up the computer, all that stuff. All these wires are, there's one wake up wire signal that wakes up the ECU, so you turn the key on. It doesn't really necessarily need to be that way for most of your applications because you only need the ECU to turn on when you want to drive. So we'll get that figured out here as soon as he's ready to jump on to the next step, and we'll have the next video. Take care, guys. Hold on. All right, guys, we wanted to do a demo here. We got these Hystetronic solder and weld connectors. I got them specifically to play with the TDI setup. So they have heat shrink tube, adhesive sealant, and then a low temperature soldering thing. We tested 2 of the smaller ones already, and they were pretty impressive. We did it with a blowtorch with a heating option, so it doesn't actually have flame coming out, it's just heat. And then we decided we were going to try one of these big ones. So we got some like 10 gauge wire here. We used one of the big connectors, and we actually went with a blowtorch. So you can tell it didn't survive the blowtorch, but we weren't testing the blowtorch. We wanted to test the solder ability. So essentially all you do is butt these 2 together and intermix the copper wire, and you can see that there if it decides to focus. They're kind of intermixed, but Brandon, you're gonna go ahead and give it the go. We're gonna see what little rip'ems here it takes to pull it apart.
Oh my God.
So we will definitely attest to the fact that these hold very well for what they are. And he actually didn't even rip the solder, he ripped the wire itself. Look at that. Jeez Louise. So yeah, if you were to couple these with just running an extra piece of heat tube over it, and then once you've soldered it and everything, run the heat tube over and seal it, I would be extremely confident in these being an awesome product. So I don't get sponsored by them, but you know what? That's a fucking good thing. So, all right, guys, there you go.